With what we talked about in the last session, I've got to imagine you probably have some pretty good ideas of some things that you need to start working on. But before we get to work, and you're probably thinking this right now, we've got to actually have a team who can help us do it. Because those 5 things we talked about, there is a lot that is involved in that. It is more than any one person can do on their own. Now, knowing that you're youth workers, I've got to imagine that you're probably pretty good at knowing how to ask people to serve in your ministry, right? You present the need, you identify how they meet that need, and then you talk about how you want to empower them to meet it. So we're not going to talk about how to do that in this session. Instead, what I want to do is I want to talk about who needs to be on this team. And more importantly, why they need to be on this team. In mental health in the church, Dr. Stephen Grevich, he's a child and adolescent psychologist and a committed member of his local church who leads a ministry for people experiencing mental health disorders. He proposes that your first step in creating a ministry response to mental health crises is actually beginning by assembling what he calls an inclusion team. All right, this is a team of people who bring a lot of wisdom and experience to the conversation, and they can help you think through things and plan in a way that's actually going to set you up to succeed rather than fail. In this book, he recommends that you need to have 6 kinds of people who are on your team, and I think that these are actually the 6 kind of people that we need to be going after as youth workers. First one is this: mental health professionals. Right? These are therapists, these are counselors, these are psychologists. What they bring to the table is a deep understanding of the issues surrounding anxiety and depression, as well as the ability to help train your other adult leaders on signs that they need to look for in students who might be struggling. Additionally, they can help you establish guidelines for care, guidelines for when students need to be sent out. They could help you figure out great counselors in the area that you could send them to. You've got to have mental health professionals on this team. The next group that you need to have is actually mental health advocates, right? These are the people who are the champions of the suffering. They're the biggest cheerleaders, and they're the ones who are constantly fighting for change. They are committed to destigmatizing issues surrounding mental health and bringing a message of hope to every student who is suffering from it. They will be a constant champion for your students who are unseen and hurting. And they will do a really good job at helping you see your own blind spots and potential areas of care that you're missing. You got to have mental health advocates on your team. The third group would be occupational therapists. These are healthcare professionals who are committed to using research and evidence-based data to empower and promote the independence of those who are dealing with things like anxiety or depression. Right? They could think through how you are educating and empowering students and families in your ministry context to develop healthy practices and disciplines that are going to actively help them take a role in their struggle with anxiety and depression. You see, these people bring something to the table that is incredibly practical. It is the ability to give students who are hurting tools. And because of that, you should have them on your team. Well, the fourth group is interior designers. And look, I get this seems like kind of an odd choice to put on this team, but it's really not. In fact, I think it's a really smart move, because a lot of students who suffer from anxiety and depression have conditions that are actually triggered by the environments and the spaces that they're in. Interior designers, along with other members of your team, can help you design environments, which could be your spaces or even your programs, that are going to assist all of these other things that you're trying to do. You can literally create spaces and places that are going to calm and soothe students rather than trigger them. And because of that, you should probably have them on your team. I think you also need to have social workers on your team. All right, these are people who are committed advocates for your students and have given their lives to fighting any system that would harm or oppress them. You see, the reality is that you probably have students who are experiencing things like anxiety and depression because of some other factors they're dealing with in life. Maybe it's something happening at school, maybe it's something happening at home, or maybe it's something entirely different. Well, a social worker can help you understand how to navigate those situations when they come up. They've got a deep understanding of the law and the resources that are available to young people, and they can help train you and your team on what needs to be done, how it needs to be done, when it needs to be done, and why it needs to be done. They'd be a great asset to have on your team. Now, the last person that you need to have on your team is wise laypersons. Now, they're not always going to have a skill set that they're going to bring to the table like some of the other members of the team. But what they do bring is often invaluable, because these people typically have deep relationships in the community that can help you build strategic partnerships with other people, with other ministries, with other organizations. And in these partnerships, that's really where you can begin to birth new initiatives. Often these people have the trust of the community, they have a love for the community and a commitment to seeing things become healthy and changing in the right way. And because of that, you want them on your team. You see, when you get these 6 groups of people on your team, they can actually help you do a lot of the things that we talked about in the last session in a way that's going to allow you to be sensitive and proactive in how you care for students who are struggling with anxiety and depression. They can help you think through how your programming needs to change, how your discipleship strategy needs to change, your online strategy, the way you care for families, and honestly, probably a whole lot more than that too. They're not only going to help you get the right systems in place, they're going to help you make sure that each of those systems is properly set up to care for the students and families you're serving. When you have the right team in place, we can start to think through our response to the mental health crisis from every angle so that that response we have is the best response possible. Now, before you move into the final session, I want to invite you to think through some of the reflection questions that are found there in your handbook. Maybe you could start to write down the names of some people who fit into these categories and then make a commitment over this next week, over this next 2 weeks to follow up with them and to ask them to be on your team. Well, after you've taken a couple minutes to do that, move on to the final session.